Don't Breathe answers the question we've all asked ourselves. How easy would it be to rob a blind man? Don't Breathe is a movie that follows three semi-professional thieves on their quest to steal $300,000 from an abandoned neighborhood in Detroit. The only thing standing in their way? One blind man. A blind man that gives them a little bit more than they bargained for. Full disclosure, I love this film. I saw it back in 2016 when it came out, and then I just saw it again recently, and honestly, I forgot how good it is. Watching it again, I noticed it's paradoxically like really violent, but also not violent at all. Like there's a lot of things that are left to your imagination. Don't get me wrong, there are a ton of violent scenes in this. But I think the most effective ones are the ones that just show you just enough so you can build something crazy in your mind. No! Which highlights how perfectly Fede Alvarez directed this realistic horror film. Well, as realistic as you can get in a horror film. The second time watching this, I also realized how brilliantly it's paced. It gets from one scene to one scene and you pick up just enough information to keep you going and to make things believable in the film itself. But I also realized how superbly the tension is built up. But do the critics agree? Let's find out. Let's begin with a review from The Guardian. Don't Breathe review. A clever, gross masterclass in tension by Jordan Hoffman. Already I like this review. It lets you know in the title that he liked it, and it also lets you know why he liked it, because of the tension. Because it's one of those horror films. It's not so much a slasher film, though it does have those elements, but it definitely relies on that tension. And like I said before, because it actually doesn't show a bunch, right? Like it's not super gratuitous. There are a couple scenes that are like, ugh. And it works so well because of that, because it doesn't show, it's not constantly showing you gore. So when you see a couple of crazy things, especially at the end, a scene involving a turkey baster, it's much more effective. The type of gross found in Don't Breathe is of the I'm laughing and shouting, ew kind, not the brutal torture porn kind that, despite the R rating, this movie rejects. The gross out factor, it's a great point. It's not, like I said, it's not that torture porn, kind of like that Hostel started. I know it existed before, but Hostel kind of like brought it back. And then like around that time, you had a bunch of films like that, which are great, but it doesn't do that, which is crazy because I think the director did The Evil Dead, I think the movie or the show, I forget which one. They are not bad people. They are just broke, desperate, and have no prospects. But all bets are off in this one. Money brings a gun, and maybe he needed it, or maybe that's what sends the blind man to take the defense of his home to the extreme. Every remaining moment in the film is ripped from nightmares, in which safety is just a stretch away, but unforeseen obstacles snap you back into doom. It's really hard for me to feel bad for the protagonist, because they're thieves, right? Now, don't get me wrong, the old man goes into some real extremes. And I don't, like, definitely he's not justified in everything he does, right? But I mean, the fact that one of them, I think the guy called Money, brings a gun into his house and fires it. I mean, the old dude doesn't know what to expect, and he's also a war veteran. So you have people in your house, he's blind, not really defenseless, but he is blind. And then some dude just broke into his house where he has $300,000 and fired a gun. I mean, it's really hard for me to feel bad for these thieves.
This next section will contain major spoilers. You've been warned.
And I think what he says in the Guardian review, it sums it up so well. Like the entire time the protagonists feel like they're safe. Or not that they're safe, but they feel like they're so close to safety. And then just when you think they're about to get away, bam, gets you again in a way you don't think is possible, right? Where it's weird is that you could clearly tell that all three were supposed to die in there, at least in one of the earlier drafts of the script. First of all, Money shoots the old guy, right? And then the old guy just ends up killing him just because he just doesn't know if he can let him go or not. Even I felt real bad for Alex. He could have left twice. Like, he didn't want to do it. They convinced him to do it. All right, that was one. The second time, he's in there and he actually leaves, right? And that's two. But then he hears a gunshot, he comes back. Oh man. And he gets it really bad. It's just like, damn. And so it's set up because Rocky escapes, and it's like so many times she's brought back. So you could tell that it's like, even I think it's great that the movie starts off with like a spoiler, because the first thing you see is the blind dude dragging a girl, and you don't really realize it's Rocky just because she's so beat up and everything like that. So you think it seems like it's set up for everyone to die. It's like it's supposed to be one of those horror films where it's just like really depressing on the ending. But Rocky does end up escaping. Kind of wish she would have just died like everyone else and the guy gets away with it. But I am glad that she escapes, but that the cops don't arrest him, and that the blind dude is just in a hospital somewhere recovering, and they just, they kind of like let him go because it just seems from the outside looking in, it was two guys broke into his house. The blind guy was able to take care of them. So I at least like that it still ends on kind of a downer. Yeah, Rocky gets away, which, she's the only one who had a real fleshed out background, so you're kind of happy that she gets away because it's a pretty messed up family situation she's in. Overall, I really like the review from The Guardian. I like that it's to the point. It lets you know what to expect. Hoffman understands that this film it's a horror film, and he understands the audience is for. He understands what it's trying to do and how successfully it does it. He also understands how well-paced and well-directed it is. So I think this is a great review. He does a great breakdown of the characters. He doesn't give... there are a ton of spoilers in the review, so this is definitely one of the ones you'd want to read afterwards, kind of like if you wanted to like add words to what you're feeling after you watch the film. So highly recommend this review. Our next review comes from the Boston Globe. In, Don't Breathe, Breaking In and Not Getting Out, by Tom Rousseau. Alvarez serves up some jaw-droppingly tasteless third act twist to ensure this all sticks, and that's his big mistake. He might be striving for a thriller to remember, but the real takeaway is the film's dumbfounding, misogynistic affront. Wow. So a lot to unpack there. I think if someone hadn't seen this and they read that last paragraph, they'd be like, oh, it's about misogyny or something like that. They're praising misogyny or something like that. I think that's going to confuse a lot more people than help.
Major spoilers. You've been warned.
The bad guy's he's making the first girl who killed his daughter give him a daughter, right? No one in the film agrees with that, and it's not portrayed as it's a good thing. Like, this is clearly a bad guy, and it's clearly twisted, and it builds up the suspense, especially with what he plans to do with Rocky once he accidentally kills a girl. So it's not looked on as a good thing. I think that's the thing. I think that's what makes him evil. That's why he is the bad guy. It's hard for me to feel sorry for the thieves, but there's no way once the blind man crosses a certain line that you can justify what he's doing, right? Him defending himself is one thing, but him forcing a woman to give him a child, that's insane. Like, the movie does nothing to elevate this or say, yeah, he's justified in doing this. Like, nothing in the movie points to that. So I think his last, in this review, I think that's misguided. I think that's going to like mislead people into what the film is trying to do. That review is going to go in the bad pile because it's confusing people and it's lying to people. Now, let's see what the people had to say about Don't Breathe. 10 out of 10, best horror movie. 9 out of 10, love this movie, highly recommend. No score, morons versus a blind man. 3 unlikable morons break into a blind man's house to steal his money. At this stage, the 2 other morons have ample opportunity to escape by breaking through the massive unbarred windows right next to where they're standing. But for plot reasons, this doesn't occur to them. Neither does distracting the blind man by throwing any of the many objects located around the house, or indeed throwing them at him, or simply hitting him with them. You see it in the film, the windows are clearly barred, you can't go through them. If you've ever lived in a bad neighborhood, which I have, the bars are not wide enough for people to get in. If they were, it would defeat the whole purpose of the bars. But I do agree with the fact, because there were a couple instances I'm like, why don't, like, when the blind man's getting near them, Why don't they just pick something and throw it like the other way, like, and then he would just hear that? Like, the fact that that didn't happen was really strange and a pretty big oversight, I would say. That's the one part of this review, I think, that has some merit. The majority is, at least from users and even critics, it was pretty positive. I think in general people liked it. As long as you like thrillers, again, a very strong content, I think it's definitely worth a watch. But what do you think? Do you agree that it's the pacing is good, that the tension is built well? Or do you think it's a little too much? Do you think that the premise is just too absurd that maybe a blind vet wouldn't be able to do this? Yeah, it's a little weird when you say it, but I think it's believable in the film that they set up, in the characters that they built. But let me know if you liked Don't Breathe. Give a video a like if you liked it. If you disliked it, give it a dislike. Subscribe. I have more videos coming up and also a few treats coming up too. And as always, thank you for watching.